What if we could reinvent cash for the digital age? It sounds kind of futuristic, right? Well, that's the big idea behind something called central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. But like with any shiny new tech, you've got to ask the critical question. What's the trade-off? Today, we're diving into a really cool experiment that gets right to the heart of it all. When it comes to a digital dollar, what's the price of privacy?
I mean, think about what's in your wallet right now. You've probably got some cash, that's totally anonymous. And you've definitely got credit or debit cards, which are super convenient, but, they leave a digital footprint of everything you do. For as long as I can remember, it's felt like we've had to pick one or the other, total privacy or seamless convenience. But what if we didn't have to choose? What if a new kind of money could finally give us the best of both worlds?
And this is the trade-off we all deal with every single day. On one side, you've got physical cash. You use it, and the transaction is just between you and the person you're paying. No middlemen, no data trail, simple. But on the other side, every time you swipe, tap, or click, you're creating a little piece of data. And that data gets collected, stored, and you better believe it gets monetized by banks, payment companies, and tech giants. And that's the big tug-of-war right at the center of how we spend money today. So, to get our heads around all this, here's what we're going to cover. First, what even is a CBDC? Then we'll get into the biggest question for the people designing them. How much privacy? We'll go inside a fascinating experiment that tried to see into the future, look at the 3 flavors of CBDC they tested, check out the pretty surprising results, and finally, talk about what it all means for the future of, well, your wallet. All right, so first things first. This term, central bank digital currency, gets thrown around a ton, but what are we actually talking about here? Okay, so a CBDC is basically a digital version of a country's cash. Think a digital dollar, a digital euro, you get the idea. Now, the most important part of this definition is that phrase, direct liability of the central bank. What does that mean? Well, think about it like this. The money in your bank account right now, that's technically a promise, an IOU from your commercial bank. But a CBDC, just like the actual cash in your hand, would be a direct promise from the central bank, from the government itself. That would make it the safest form of digital money, period. And this right here, this is the whole point of what we're talking about today. See, cash is private just because of what it is. It's physical. But a CBDC's privacy level isn't automatic. It has to be designed, coded right in from the very beginning. And the choices that policymakers are making right now will decide if this new money protects our privacy or, and this is the scary part, if it creates the most powerful surveillance tool we've ever seen.
So how do you even start designing something like this? Well, you can imagine the folks building it have this big privacy dial in front of them. They can crank it all the way down for total transparency, turn it all the way up for cash-like anonymity, or, find a spot somewhere in the middle.
So what would those different settings on the dial actually look like? Well, on one end of the spectrum, you have basically zero privacy. Your identity, your transactions, it's all stored together, super easy to link up. In the middle, you could get clever and engineer some privacy. Maybe your identity is in one digital vault and your spending history is in a totally separate one, making it really, really hard to connect them. And then you've got the other extreme, a system that works just like digital cash, complete anonymity, at least for all those smaller day-to-day purchases. And this is the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, it's easy to talk about this stuff in theory, but how do you really know what people want and what they'll actually use before you spend billions building the thing? You can't just send out a simple poll because we all know what people say they want and how they actually behave can be 2 very different things. No, you need to run an experiment. And that is exactly what a team of researchers did in a really important paper for the Bank for International Settlements. They came up with this clever experiment to get a glimpse into the future, to see how we might all behave when we're actually faced with these choices. Okay, so here's the setup. First, they got a big representative group of people, over 3,500 of them. Then, and this is the really clever part, they randomly split them up. Each little group was shown a different imaginary CBDC, each with a different privacy setting. And then they asked a really simple question. If you were buying this thing, what would you use? Cash, your card, or this new CBDC? By looking at how all these different groups answered, they could figure out what really makes a difference to people.
So what were these flavors of CBDC they were testing? Well, the researchers basically took all this complicated policy talk and boiled it down to 3 main options, each with a totally different way of handling your data.
First up, we have the combined model. You can pretty much think of this as the low privacy setting. In this version, all your personal info, your name, your address, and all your transaction data, what you bought, where, when, it all goes into one big digital bucket. The main thing to know is that it would be super simple to connect who you are with what you buy. Now, this second model is really interesting because it builds privacy right into the system's DNA. It's called the separate model. Here, your identity info goes to one place, but your transaction data goes to a completely different one. They build a digital wall between the two, making it, and I'm quoting the study here, essentially impossible to link who bought what. It's a very high degree of privacy, by design.
And the third option, the voucher model. This one is designed to be as close to digital cash as you can get. So for big stuff, yeah, there's a record to prevent things like money laundering. But for the small stuff, your daily coffee, your bus ticket, you'd use a special anonymity voucher and poof, no record, no digital trail at all. Just pure, anonymous digital cash.
Okay, so we've got our 3 different designs, and people are being shown one of them. But the researchers didn't stop there. They added a really clever twist, because they didn't just want to test the power of the design itself, they wanted to test the power of information. Here's what they did. For each of those 3 groups, they split them in half. Half of the people saw just the description of the CBDC. The other half saw one extra sentence, and that sentence simply said that using a CBDC could stop private companies and big tech from using their personal data for commercial purposes. They called it the PCU nudge. The big question was, could that one little sentence completely change how people felt?
So, the experiment is set. What happened? Well, the results came in, and wow, they were not subtle at all. They give us a crystal clear picture of what people actually care about when it comes to their money.
Okay, this chart right here is everything. Let's break it down. It's showing us what people chose for sensitive purchases. You know, things where you really want privacy. See that bar on the far left? That's the low privacy model. Not very popular. Only about 22% of people would use it. But now watch what happens as you add more privacy and move to the right. The next model jumps up, and the ones that got that little bit of extra info about big tech, even higher. The trend is just impossible to miss. The more privacy you offer, the more people want in. Just how big was that climb? Get this. When you compare the least private option to the most private option that also had that info nudge, people's willingness to use it jumped by a staggering 60%. Let's really let that sink in. That 60% jump tells us that people are way more likely to adopt this new tech if, 1, it's designed from the ground up to be private, and 2, they know it'll shield them from corporate data snooping. This is huge. It tells us privacy isn't just some side feature, it's the whole ballgame. And if you're wondering why that nudge about big tech was so effective, well, this chart explains it all. The researchers asked people, who are you most worried about misusing your data? And the answer couldn't be clearer. Yeah, people worry about the government, sure, but they are way more worried about big tech companies. For most people, the fear of commercial surveillance is just a much bigger deal than the fear of government surveillance.
Okay, so that was a deep dive into one specific experiment. But let's zoom out. Why does any of this matter in the real world? Why should you care about what a few thousand people said in a survey?
Because this is not some academic thought experiment. This is happening right now. The European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the US Federal Reserve, all the major players are actively designing and debating this stuff as we speak. The very same questions from the experiment, how to store the data, how much anonymity to build in, these are being decided in high-level meetings all over the world today. The future of our money is literally being sketched out right now. So if you're going to remember 3 things from all this, make it these. Number 1, privacy isn't just a nice to have, it's the single most important thing that will decide if people actually use this new money. Number 2, people really like the idea of a digital dollar that can act as a shield against big tech's data collection. And number 3, people clearly prefer designs that build privacy in from the start by keeping who we are separate from what we buy. And that really leaves us with the big one, doesn't it? The technology to do all this is here. It's ready to go. But technology is never neutral. It always has the values of its creators baked into it. So as we start building the money of the future, we have to decide what our values are. Where do we draw the line between preventing crime and protecting a citizen's right to a private life? And maybe the most important question of all, who gets to draw that line?